7 months ago, Apple shattered the leak community because we all were expecting that the Apple Watch would go the way of the iPad and the iPhone and adopt a more squared-off edge design. Apple heard what we were expecting and intentionally went as hard as they could in the opposite direction and said, we're gonna make the Apple Watch even rounder and even more curvy. And to be completely honest with you, even though it was not what I was expecting, I absolutely fell in love with the design and I've enjoyed using it for the past 7 months. The Series 7 lined up with the 7-month timeline far too well for me to not do an update video. So without further ado, let's begin. Yeah, I know a lot of people that were still bigly disappointed by the fact that the Apple Watch was not super squared off, but purely from a subjective standpoint, when the new one came out and I saw Apple actually applying kind of the curved display to the edges, and the fact that they got the bezel even thinner, like, I don't think it's talked about enough that the Apple Watch Series 7, despite not being what everyone was hoping for, still has the thinnest bezels of any Apple product ever made. It's also the only Apple product with the display that curves over the side a little bit. It's subtle, and I think Apple did it in the most delicate and elegant way possible, because you can technically see information from a 90-degree angle. It's a lot easier when there's less light around you to refract off of the edges, but still, it doesn't warp the content on the display too much. I mean, if you look at the display from an angle and you're scrolling, you can kind of see the pixels, you know, moving a little bit over the edges, but for the most average viewing angle, which is something like this, it doesn't distort the content, which is something I noticed when I used Android phones in the past that had the curved edge design. I didn't hate it, but I did notice a bit of distortion when watching certain videos, and I think this was the most elegant way of implementing it. Plus, it's curved all the way around, whereas we're used to most Android phones, if they do have that curved edge display, they just do it on the sides, and then they usually have to have a pretty noticeable chin and forehead to go along with it. And it still feels absolutely comfortable on the wrist, despite me wearing the heaviest Apple Watch they've ever made. Yeah, it's a little bit bigger than the Series 6, and I got the stainless steel option, so that's why my left arm looks so much better than my right, because it's constantly working out. No Apple Fitness Plus subscription required. Although in terms of activity, yes, I still absolutely use it when I go on my mountain bike rides, or if I go for a run or a walk. It's still never been easier for me to just raise my wrist and say, hey, start a workout, and the battery life still remains strong. I know there were some people wondering if battery life would be addressed with the Series 7, even though it technically has a slightly larger battery on the inside than the Series 6. Because the display is larger and brighter, I expect that the battery life is not really that much different. However, because the Apple Watch CPU can only get so efficient, whereas you can get creative with certain watch faces, particularly watch faces that have a lot of black on them, because those pixels can just stay all the way off, that does result in a fairly large difference in battery life. I will end the day closer to 50 or 40% with my Apple Watch if I choose the time-lapse watch face, whereas if I use a watch face like this that is more, you know, dark and there's less pixels moving and there's less color to calibrate for, I can find myself ending the day with 70%, which, yes, that means the Series 7 can easily last me multiple days throughout the week if I need it to, and that's probably because I don't use the always-on display, as most of you can probably tell. I tried it with the Series 5 and Series 6 and I just never found it very useful, and I know that because I'm putting less total battery cycles on my Apple Watch, that the battery is going to overall degrade slower if you don't have the display turned on at all times. It does impact your battery life, and because Apple Watch batteries are so small, they're prone to degrading a bit faster than your typical iPhone battery does, which is why I'm comfortable not using the always-on display. However, yes, after 7 months, I have recorded the battery health. It is now at 99%, so it's completely worthless now. I gotta throw it out and buy the Series 8 in a couple months, but no. All jokes aside, I'm incredibly grateful that the watchOS team has done such a great job taking advantage of the hardware present and letting people check their battery health directly off of the watch, and also having optimized battery charging turned on by default. So even though the Series 7 can fast charge really quickly, if you're like me and you don't care too much about fast charging or sleep tracking, also yes, the fast charging will degrade the battery faster, then you can just drop your watch on the charger every night and it will stop charging when it reaches 80% and then wait until right before you wake up to go to 100. Honestly, if they had a more custom charge limiter in there, there, I would probably cap it at 80% every single day, because I know there's some people who watch my videos that say they keep their Apple Watch between 20 and 80%, which is this delicate charging balancing act every day, and he's been able to preserve his battery health a lot better. So if they made that feature easier, I would turn it on, but I'm not willing to just pay close attention to what my watch is charged at throughout the day. But I know some people were curious if the Series 7 keyboard was worth it over the Series 6 alone, and of course that's going to be very subjective on the person, and I encourage you to try one out if a friend has one or at an Apple store or something, because I definitely know people that don't like texting very much on their Apple Watch, and they'll use it as a notification system, but as soon as you want to communicate with someone and actually start texting or dictating, then they're going to grab their phone to actually write out the message. I'm the type of person that has gotten so comfortable with the Apple Watch Series 7 keyboard that I genuinely will not grab my phone more and more these days, because the display is like the biggest I've ever seen on a wearable like this, and I don't think I would be comfortable with them adding a software keyboard to older Apple Watches because it would just be too crammed. But because the screen is so massive on the Series 7, I've actually gotten pretty dang comfortable with the swipe keyboard, and I can write out full messages, full texts, and not really feel like I'm missing out too much by not using my iPhone. I mean, sure, you could probably be a lot more comfortable with the iPhone keyboard, but all I'm saying is just a few days ago, I was sending text messages to several people from my watch. My wife was like, "Don't you want your phone so you can text people directly?" And I was like, not really. I mean, I can type just about as fast on the watch. Sometimes you may get mistakes here and there with the swipe keyboard, but it's absolutely made a difference in how I use my watch over the previous generation ones, and it's gotta be like 5 or 6 times faster than just using Scribble or dictation like we used to. Is that worth upgrading over the Series 6 for? That's probably gonna be a harder sell. I could see a lot of people just saying this is too complicated and I'll save a lot of money by just keeping my old watch and using my iPhone to text, but for the people who are willing to burn the extra money on a prettier watch, then it's absolutely a benefit I could see you taking advantage of. And on that same note, there's been people asking if I plan on upgrading to the Apple Watch Series 8 later in the year, and I feel very confident saying at this point that there has not been a single rumor or a single leak about the next generation Apple Watch that sounds even remotely interesting to me that would make me consider upgrading. This was not so much about looking for health features or for faster processors, and I know for some reason Apple Watch fans were disappointed that the processor didn't get updated. I don't know what that was going to allow for, but regardless, I did plan on buying the stainless steel Apple Watch with the sapphire glass because I knew it would age better, and that is absolutely true. There's not a single scratch or a single scuff on my display, and I have abused it. I've hit my watch against door frames, and I've bumped it against rocks and against hard places, and I don't notice any damage or any scuffs despite me not having a screen protector or any protection of any kind. And the reason I was comfortable spending that much was because I knew I was going to keep the watch for more than a single year, and typically Apple does not redesign Apple Watches very much year over year. So because we got a pretty noticeable screen update last year, I'm not expecting the Series 8 to look much different, and I think that's okay. I think Apple has actually stayed fairly consistent with the fundamental design language of the Apple Watch from Gen 1 to now, and it's an iconic design. It's very recognizable and obvious from the Apple Watch icon, and also just picking it out from a crowd, you can tell, yep, that's an Apple Watch. You can tell it's got the digital crown, it's got the side button in a very recognizable aspect ratio with that display. Even though it's been refined a lot and the design has changed drastically, I mean, even now, I still check out other people's watches like my wife or my sister who have the Series 3, and I'm like, how do you put up with bezels this thick? And they put up with it, they're fine with it. You know, those watches were much cheaper than mine, but they're still recognizable as Apple Watches at the end of the day. And I appreciate Apple for making the watch bands compatible after all these years. And even though the battery life may not be a week or 2 weeks or so, I'm glad that they don't compromise on the graphics performance and the responsiveness of the UI, and the fact that they want to keep giving watchOS updates to these things for years and years, probably more than they should. We've been asking for them to kill the Series 3 for a while now, but especially things like optimized battery charging ensure that your battery health can be saved as much as it possibly can. And hopefully in the future, it sounds like Apple might be expanding on low power mode so that you could stretch your battery life even further when necessary. Let me know how your guys' Apple Watch Series 7s or 6s or 4s have aged down in the comments below. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you all in the next one.